At the dawn of time, amidst an endless sea, the first land was created by God. As it was his first, the land began as a makeshift assortment of trash, and upon this isle, God brought into the world the first being, a crude, towering creature known as Jumbo Champloon. However, before this new island could be completed, God went to the bathroom and forgot about its existence, leaving it forever abandoned, an unfinished land. This is the complete lore of Little King's story. God then made a new continent, formed around a powerful volcano, a full world complete with mountains, rivers, deserts, and many forests. In the southwest of this world was the land in which all life began. A rich and varied assortment of flora and fauna sprung forth and populated the continent. This included common animals like fish, birds, cows, and such like, but also stranger creatures too. This early prehistoric period saw many large, savage beasts, titanic brutes even larger than dragons. These mysterious monsters roamed the surface until their extinction, and their remains would later be discovered in the northwestern plains, staining the fields with combustible oils and gases. Other bizarre life also decorated this world. Some plants and animals would begin perfectly benign, but would come across the strange fruits and seeds of the Janga plant, whose drug-like properties could turn them aggressive, or mutate them into stronger creatures. This was a wild place, populated by untamed life, but that wouldn't last. In the reaches of space, a long-standing war was occurring between aliens from different dimensions over a source of devastating power. The Diamond Egg. One of these interdimensional factions managed to find themselves in procurement of this entity, and were searching for a safe haven hidden from the eyes of their enemy. Eventually, they would find this fresh, young world to escape to with their prize, leaving crop circle-like patterns upon landing. The world now housed an extraterrestrial race, and an anxious one at that. The Eggans were a highly intelligent tribe of fiercely trained warriors, and seeing that they were the most intelligent species in the world, they established an unchallenged empire. These worrywart soldiers practiced deep philosophy, so self-aware as to see the futility of their very power, and so cognizant that some could gain a limited prescience. It was inevitable that they would be a heavily paranoid society. Their understanding of the conscious mind led them to experimenting on animals, capturing them in egg-like devices in an attempt to force them into greater beings. In the end, their science successfully managed to get monkeys to evolve and gain a higher mind, but not without also instilling them with the Eggan's same sense of worry. They had created new beings fueled by an innately anxious mind. These evolved monkeys figured out how to escape the Eggans, releasing the first human life into the world. The Great Eggan civilization may have managed to last a rumoured several million years. However, as with any empire, it could not last. They still had the Diamond Egg to protect, and eventually other flying saucers found the world too, still hoping to track it down. So, the then leader of this domain, named Omelette, hatched a plan. Omelette led his troops in flying their interdimensional ships through the cosmos in search of a protector from off-world. The spacefaring Eggans, naturally, went to Richmond, California, Omelette vetted and selected an ordinary schoolgirl, then they abducted her, replaced her memories with an enhanced mind and psychic abilities, and took her back to their home. She became the mother of all, a being deeply connected to the life force that ran through every being that was a part of the world. With these newly imbued powers, she was entrusted with the Diamond Egg, able to sense when unwanted attention from outer space would come its way, and much more. Under Omelette's direction, the civilization focused on self-preservation, retreating into a much smaller, emptier kingdom, veiled from the rest of the world by a surrounding maze that filled those few who entered it with deep worry. Willingly hidden at the centre were capsules sealing away the king and the girl, as the Eggans kept dutiful watch from the shadows. The world's dominant civilization was taken from it, but in return had introduced life that had seen and learned anxiety and conquest. From then on, its lands were inundated with wars. As men rose and fell, vying to become the greatest ruler its history had ever seen, the continent then gained its name, Kingsworld, an existence defined by the cycles of rulership. Many tried, many failed, but some succeeded. Within centuries of Warrior Kingdom fading and leaving a vacuum, a mysterious group emerged to become a global superpower. It is unknown where they originated from, but the demonic Onii were in the middle of a serious warpath. The duly cutthroat yet playful tribe took over large swaths of land, etching their markings into the ground and on flags to hang on trees, erecting shrines of rocks, and carving an intricate series of tunnels to inhabit within the walls of a dark valley. They weren't just forming their own Onii kingdom and iconography, but actively stopping other kingdoms from forming too. The Onii king wasn't above imprisoning other powerful figures, namely the Princess Apricot Fizz, while his partner would produce more baby Oniis to populate the land, and their destruction extended to burning the natural crude oil in the plains of the ancient fossils. That's not to say that Onii were mere mindless creatures. They enjoyed a fairly jovial culture, playing with many toys like hula hoops, bamboo horses, and chopstick guns, and were just about able to write and speak. That said, they were still skilled warriors with barbaric intentions. The Onii spent considerable time slaying dragons and cows for their parts, and experimenting on them for further warfare. Dragons would nearly become extinct. However, the bovines managed to do quite well for themselves. The cows were a wise clan that passed down for generations wisdom on securing a long and happy life. They employed their cleverness to form a strong bond with humans, and together, some even managed to band together to create their own small, obscure country. The nation of Alpoko celebrated the bovines' happy-go-lucky approach to life, and they didn't burden themselves with understanding what the wider world was like. This was a peaceful domain of cows and carefree men, where humans and cows alike were invited in to share the mindset of enjoying life. Although, the Alpokians did not shy from accepting both the reality of life and death. A notable landmark at the far edge of Alpoko's borders was a quiet beach. The kingdom of the dead was said to lie within the sea that it faced, and ghosts were reported rising among its waves. When an Alpokian faced a deadly end, they often washed ashore on the beach's sands, encased in an urn, evading their being claimed by the afterlife. Sometimes, however, it would be too late, and the coast would deliver back but a lifeless corpse. For those Alpokians that did not return, men and cows alike that had not been blessed by the mysterious powers of the Resurrection Beach, they were mourned and bestowed a respectful burial in the town's cemetery. Despite their intelligence, the cows did not even allow the humans' awareness of how truly sapient they were, or that they could speak. Instead, they passively instilled their calming philosophy in the humans to carry them through an otherwise challenging world. Overall, times were good. Or rather, they would have been, if the people weren't completely poor and powerless. Alpoko had no leader, putting it at a distinct disadvantage to the wildlife that would encroach on the fringes of its settlement. They were no ordinary creatures either. Among them were the likes of Ogre Ergo, a masked maniac wielding an axe and an unpredictable personality, as well as the Owl Hag, a strange old woman living in a treehouse who used the tainted seeds of the Janga plant to control the owls of the forest in wreaking havoc. And if these wild characters weren't enough of a problem, the Oni kingdom lay at the southern border, and would not spare Alpoko from becoming their joke. The Oni purposefully grew and pickled Janga fruits over the course of several years for warfare, distributing them to easy targets, such as, unfortunately, the younger, more rebellious cows of Alpoko. They lured the calves away from their families and into the ranks, mutating them into something much more demonic in the process, and then the Oni would be able to use them in their battles, sometimes even as steeds. If this wasn't enough of a bane to the Alpokians, the Oni army were unafraid to pillage and absorb the land in which they were living, feeding the surrounding wildlife to now endanger their human and bovine neighbours. Even Alpoko's signature army of knights riding bulls into battle weren't enough to keep the nation secure from these many creatures vying for the land. Many bull knights lost their lives serving their country. However, not even the remains of these deceased warriors were beyond the limits of what the Oni were prepared to tamper with, and later, rumours began that the bodies of the fallen had been seen, once again, roaming the earth. These otherwise carefree people had no hope to grow, going hungry in their tiny shacks for houses. The country was falling into shambles. With all this being too much to bear, one determined Bull Knight stepped up to the plate to set things right. Bull Knight Hauser Oreganostein and his trusty seed Pancho set out on a quest to find the one true ruler to take back their power from the infestation of savage animals and the Oni Kingdom. This is still quite some time ago in this rough world's past, during an older era where the likes of knights were still common. One knight in particular was once more powerful than any other, able to call upon bolts of lightning with his blade. However, he was cursed, and he too met a grisly fate in this unforgiving world, as he was eaten alive by wolves, leaving his armour and his family behind. This period, though, would not last, as approaching the modern day, human society became more developed. Knights are out, and in their place come soldiers. New technologies emerge, and soon founded are such establishments as tourism agencies, sunflower clubs, and bars. Within one bar begins the story of another powerful kingdom, as a small man bearing a fragile ego attempts to hit above his league and chat up the most beautiful woman in attendance. Ferne Branca, however, sees no interest in this rude and uncharismatic excuse for a man. Sauvage determines that the factor standing between him and a chance with this dream woman is his height. Crazed by lust, Sauvage kidnapped Miss Branca and dragged her to the peak of the now dormant volcano that stood as the world's tallest mountain, where he would stand on tiptoe and stretch to the heavens until Ferne would be impressed enough to deliver him her hand in marriage. As this was never the issue for the young lady, she didn't budge and remained trapped, as he stood here unmoving for a long, long time, long enough that his beard began to grow wildly out of control and snake down the sides of the mountain with a mind of its own. His determination caught the attention of other men, appealing to their longing for greatness and tallness. So, Long Sauvage started a cult, a hierarchy of power determined by height, where those who were taller were afforded more status. The lower ranks of the Sauvage soldiers were regular mounties, whereas a greater tallness would award you the higher rank of a beard general. This mountain land was given its own precepts, boiling down to, you should be tall, you should work towards your goals, you should get whatever you want, you should rest when needed, and you should be sexy. Painfully stretching the body out using gym equipment, trading growth potions, and scaling the mountain were all methods exploited to become a taller and greater man. However, Long Sauvage remained at the top of his self-named mountain, Sobermanjaro, and thus, as the tallest, highest, and greatest man in the Tiptoe Kingdom, he was its king. Some wished to turn to luxury to cope with this broken, warring world, while others profited from such luxury. The land from which all life sprung became a perfect habitat to grow food aplenty, and spawned a highly popular, country-sized diner run by a peculiar couple, King Shish Kababu and Queen Monica Spumoni. The king took the form of a man so obsessed with confectionery that he essentially built his kingdom out of cake. According to the king's secretary, the aim of the Forest Cafeteria was to use its mountains of food to attract high-profile visitors who could form a friendly diplomacy with His Majesty. Whether this is true and he had a candid admiration for other royals, or perhaps instead he secretly just wanted to eat them, remains a mystery. Either way, the outdoor cafe was a huge success, enough so that work even began constructing a second one within the kingdom, although it was never finished and it became abandoned and overrun with insects. Regardless, Shish Kababu was a strict, ruthless ruler, whose sheer greed kept him from allowing even the much thinner queen in sharing his good food, leading to the two eventually separating. An upset Spumoni got her own back at him by smuggling the food into her own secret stash, but then she ate so much of it that she too became overweight, leaving her unable to escape back through the entrance to her reserves. Another nation marketing itself as an enticing retreat was the Kingdom of the Jolly. These gorgeous Sakura-speckled party grounds would bring in common folk and esteemed guests alike to have a drink and watch the cherry blossoms bloom, every day and every night, all year round. This kingdom's unique site within King's World was hosted by King Duvroc, whose response to the fear and violence of the outside world was found at the bottom of a bottle. Duvroc believed that alcohol was the answer to finding peace. As long as you're having brainless fun, then you're blissfully ignorant of the ever-present reality of war. He must have found some success from this belief, as this became a favoured hotspot of the Onii military, who spent their downtime between violent crusades at these beer gardens getting wasted and enjoying the party. However, although he could maintain a friendly relationship with the Onii kingdom, the same could not be said about his family. Duvroc's relationship with his wife deteriorated from his increasingly erratic, aggressive behaviour, leaving her in paranoia speculating how much of his time out of the house was spent secretly drinking. He lost his relationship with his daughter Scarlet. As a highly intelligent scholar dedicated to her studies, she clashed with the king's careless demeanour. The two couldn't stand being around each other without fighting, so the young Princess Scarlet Bouquet hid herself away from her father, only coming out when he inevitably passed out from inebriation. The modern age also saw the rise of technology, like computers, video games, the Nintendo Wii, and television. One lonely little boy grew up developing a starry-eyed interest in the world of TV, a comfort for him when he was feeling most down. But that wasn't all. The child dreamed big. He carried his passion to his later life and found work at a broadcasting station, and then, as an adult, he started his very own studio from the ground up in the middle of a forgotten, dusty wasteland. And thus, the international celebrity, King TV Dinner, was born, a star beloved the world over. With his battalion of broadcasters, TV Dinner would bring his ambition to life, flourishing in the lead role of nearly every show that he produced. His business grew to such heights that he was even airing private broadcasts for God himself. However, Dinner's triumphs must have gone to his head. When his own sister, the up-and-coming singer Kokomo Pine, tried to get roles at his station, he maintained an iron fist over any other on-screen appearances. Dinner emptily promised Kokomo her own photo books, her own show, and so forth, if she just stayed out of his way and practiced harder until her talent was good enough to warrant her debut. In the end, his own stardom just wasn't enough for him, and he grew obsessed. He was adamant to get TVs into as many houses across the world as possible, and charged them steeply for broadcasting licenses. If viewers couldn't pay the fees, then they were invited onto twisted game shows, quizzes that penalised contestants with carpet bombing, where dinner enjoyed watching them suffer for live entertainment. In fact, TV Dinner was so deeply consumed with the power of the small screen that he replaced his own head with a CRT and continued to update the model as higher quality TVs came out. The world has been poisoned by the insecurities of adulthood. A promising creation turned lost cause. The naturally anxious human mind leads only to a plague of miserable adults who cling to unhealthy obsessions like overthinking, sex appeal, food, alcohol, and mindless entertainment to avoid the problems of the world around them, but in turn end up with conflicts of their own devising. This history didn't go unnoticed. It was directly observed by the oldest being, Jumbo Champloo, and the equally incomplete underlings of his forgotten domain, the Craftians. As he saw it, the sins of wars, invasions, and even just grown-ups had turned the world to ruin. Yet this living abomination, separated from it all by an ocean, had maintained his innocence from the world's genesis, before man, a pacifism foreign to the current era of kingdoms. But too aroused by the prospect to ignore, they ultimately dedicated their efforts to take the junk pile they called home and recycle it into a kingdom of their very own devising, one that stood in defiance of a world of violence. They worked tirelessly to finish the ancient isle that God never could, constructing everything down to the trees, the grass, and the very ground beneath their feet. Champloo still remained the de facto ruler. They were safe. Those few that stumbled across this land would become stuck and would not return, and nobody survived entering the dangerous construction sites. Nobody except the army of the Onii. Without hesitation, they redeveloped the sacred ruler's very body into a living weapon against his wishes, leaving the first living creature something of a puppet ruler over this new island. And with the Onii did die the last relic of peace in the King's World. In the end, the oppression of kingdoms had devoured each corner of every land. To survive in this world, you needed a king. Without one, you were Alpoko. 35 years later, their efforts had not delivered them a leader. Their enemies were getting the best of them. The chaotic beasts of the forest had just taken their beach and ravaged their historical graveyard. The menace of the Onii had not long conquered the local observatory. They faced the possibility of vanishing from history. Hauser, the Bull Knight, was growing weary from his quest. He was close to giving up all hope on ever saving his home, when one fateful morning, he found a lonely Alpokian child lost in one of the now treacherous forests. This mysterious boy emerged from a hidden grove, wearing an equally mysterious glowing crown, unlike anything the elderly knight had ever seen. Hauser takes this as a sign, and promptly declares young Corobo to be the one true king to the long-wanted kingdom of Alpoko. Hauser, however, does not know a great many things. Hauser does not know of the other kingdoms that have arisen beyond that of the Onii kingdom. Hauser does not know that the crown on Corobo's head is magical and grants its wearer the power of mind control. And Hauser does not know that within that forest, Corobo had just become God's chosen one. That God led him to the magic crown so that the boy may use its power and follow God's guidance to rise up against the wrongs of each of the other kings and their kingdoms to create the perfect world. All Hauser knows is that the once dwindling Alpoko now has hope, as he declares a new calendar to commemorate the start of a wistful new era for the kingdom, a period of history known as the Little King's Story. Be sure to subscribe, as next time we'll be explaining the story of Little King's Story and its true meaning. Thank you to this channel's patrons for their support, and thank you for watching.